Exposed, the incredible moment a rancher revealed his heart and broke tradition after 50 years, in the blistering heart of Texas, where the relentless sun blazed down on parched earth, a well-worn silence enveloped the Thompson ranch. Jack Thompson's hands, calloused and strong, gripped the edge of a wooden trunk he discovered hidden among cobwebs and shadows in the barn. Moments sharpened as he pried it open, unveiling the intimate world of his late mother, her sketches, her vibrant paintings that whispered of colors he had never dared to embrace. Each piece surged with a longing he had buried deep beneath the weight of tradition. Jack felt exposed, as if the wind had ripped the thick fabric of his stoic facade, leaving raw, vulnerable flesh in its wake. What would the community, the very people who had defined him for over 50 years, think if he dared to share this hidden part of himself? The tension escalated as Jack paced between the flickering memories of his mother's passion and the gruff expectations of his father, whose disapproval felt like a specter lurking around every corner. He had spent his life tending to cattle, clothed in the skin of a rugged rancher, yet inside, a yearning for self-expression twisted like a lasso around his heart. There was a storm brewing inside him, a cacophony of emotions both terrifying and exhilarating. He could hear his father's gravelly voice in the shadows, a constant reminder of the man he had to be, a stalwart rancher with no place for soft pursuits. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. That evening, the air was thick with unspoken words as Jack sat down for dinner with his father. The usual clink of forks and the familiar taste of cornbread seemed ordinary enough, yet the atmosphere buzzed with latent tension. Then, like a bolt from the blue, his father collapsed, surrendering to exhaustion that had lurked beneath his tough veneer. Jack's heart raced as he rushed to support him, but what rushed through his mind wasn't just concern, it was a seismic shift. The silence that followed felt suffocating, amplifying the grip of his internal struggle. Did he want to be a man bound by legacy or a man who pursued passion? The weight of tradition loomed heavier than ever as anguish twisted in his stomach. In that charged moment, Jack resolved to enter the local art contest, a chance to break free from the shackles of expectation. But the thought of revealing his mother's art, his own hidden desires, filled him with dread. How would his father react? This fear clawed at him, the impulse for self-expression locked in a fierce battle with years of prescribed identity. When he timidly shared his decision, fire ignited in his father's eyes. Words were exchanged, sharp and cutting, years of unvoiced love unraveled before him. As Jack stepped onto the stage for his first art presentation, the familiar faces of his community stared back, seeing only the rancher they had always known. Yet deep inside, doubts roared. Would this moment sever his ties to family? Would his father's disappointment become a canyon too wide to bridge? As he unveiled his mother's works, struggles teetered on the precipice, still unexpressed emotions, all he had ever wanted colliding fiercely with everything he had been raised to uphold. Jack stood there, teetering, heart exposed, caught on the edge of a transformation that felt both liberating and horrifying. Jack's hands trembled as the crowd's gaze pierced through him, a sea of familiar faces now shrouded in apprehension. With each piece of art he revealed, nostalgia clashed against judgment. The vivid hues of his mother's paintings contrasted starkly with the earthy tones of his life as a rancher. Will they see the beauty, or the betrayal, he wondered, guilt tightening its grip on his chest. His mother's paintings flooded his mind, pieces bursting with life, love, and vibrancy. Each brushstroke represented dreams unfulfilled, aspirations that lay dormant in a dusty barn for too long. In that moment on stage, as he displayed her art, Jack felt an unexpected warmth bubbling up inside him. It was as if the art itself was breathing, urging him to embrace every ounce of longing he had suppressed for years, yet, as he spoke about each piece, his voice wavered. He described the way his mother would glide over the canvas, transforming emptiness into splendor. Memories surged forth, vivid yet tinged with regret for not having honored her legacy sooner. What if they mock me? He grimaced internally, but the need to express himself overcame that crippling fear, pushing him to reclaim a lost part of his identity. The audience sat in silence, some whispering, others nodding in disbelief. Jack turned back, catching sight of his father in the far corner, lines of worry creasing his weathered face. An unfamiliar tension unfurled within him, a mix of defiance and fear. What if this act of vulnerability shattered the fragile bond they shared? He continued unveiling the art, pouring out fragments of his weary heart into the crowd. He felt it then, an undeniable shift within him. The act of sharing unleashed a flood of emotion. Maybe this is who I am, not just who they expect me to be, he thought, his breath becoming steadier, more deliberate as he immersed deeper into this newfound strength. In the days following the presentation, the ranch felt different, charged with an energy Jack had never experienced before. The appealing allure of creativity loomed over him like a vibrant sunrise, a tantalizing promise of what could unfold if he dared to embrace it. Each morning, he found himself reaching for brushes and canvases, surrendering to an insatiable urge to paint. Every stroke revealed hidden pieces of his soul, shedding the heavy layers of tradition he had felt confined by. But each evening, as he wiped the paint from his hands, the shadow of his father hung over him, silent yet overwhelming. The old expectations entangled him once again, fraying the edges of growth he so fervently sought. His father's disappointment remained unspoken, yet the air thickened with unaddressed tensions, an invisible barricade that Jack feared would prove insurmountable. With the benefit of art, clarity began to sharpen his vision of what he wanted. He organized his feelings, weighing the importance of art against the values instilled in him from childhood. Each canvas became more than just vibrant colors, it transformed into an embodiment of his defiance against the traditional paths laid out for him. But as he ventured further into this nebulous space between expectation and desire, the tension grew. Jack realized he would have to confront his father directly, voice the intricate struggle that churned within him. The time had come to face old traditions, to challenge the wall between them, and perhaps, to find a bridge of understanding. Would the confrontation ease tensions or escalate them into an irreversible rift? As he prepared to initiate that vital conversation, a crucial detail loomed on his horizon: the art exhibit was just days away. And with it, the opportunity or risk of sharing not only his mother's work but also the vulnerable part of himself that he had so meticulously guarded. Would he dare to summon the courage to evolve beyond his legacy? The weight of that question pressed heavily on his shoulders as he stood before the scattered paint of a future yet unseen. Jack stared at the canvas before him, the colors bleeding together in a chaotic rhythm that mirrored the disarray of his thoughts. Each stroke felt like an affirmation, a rebellion against a life scripted by someone else's expectations. He repositioned the easel, squinting at the sun filtering through the barn's windows. He could almost hear his mother's gentle voice guiding him, reminding him to paint not just what he saw but what he felt. Just out of reach, however, was the clarity he sought. The upcoming exhibit loomed like a thundercloud, filled with promise yet ominous in its potential to catalyze conflict. What if the reality of displaying his work and by extension, his identity led to a confrontation with his father that risked tearing their bond apart? "I can't back out now," he muttered to himself, a thin sliver of determination piercing the veil of self-doubt. The thought of retreat made his chest tighten. What was he afraid of, facing his father's unyielding gaze, or facing the truth within himself? The mere idea of being true to his artistic spirit was both exhilarating and terrifying. Days melted into nights, and Jack found solace in the rhythm of painting. Yet, shadows of the past stalked his efforts like the long, low hum of distant storms on the horizon. Every finished piece represented a choice, a tentative step toward independence, while simultaneously mocking him with the voices of unfinished conversations. He wrestled with doubt, feeling the weight of expectation pressing down harder with every brushstroke. Finally, he sat down to write his father a letter, reasoning it might soften the impending confrontation. "Dear Dad," he began, stopping often as words failed him. The grief of not living up to familial ideals choked his thoughts. He knew he couldn't bend the truth of his heart for the sake of their relationship, that would only trap him in a cycle of regret. Instead, he poured out his thoughts directly onto the page. Art is my way of breathing. It isn't a disrespect to our legacy, but an homage to it, he wrote, the ink marking a bridge he longed to build. The moment he folded the letter and set it down, he felt a surge of liberation. Yet the relief was fleeting, as the specter of their past conversations loomed larger. That evening, his father appeared at the ranch, drawing a stark contrast against the golden hues of sunset. Jack's heart raced at the sight. It was now or never. The moment expanded around him, thick with anticipation. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of unspoken words hovering like dust in a sunbeam. Jack, his father began, voice steady but edged with something Jack hadn't encountered before, a mixture of concern and uncertainty. This could be it, he thought. Dad, I need to talk to you about the exhibit, he said, striving for calmness, yet his pulse thundered in his ears. It's not just about the paintings, it's about me finding my own path. His father's eyebrows knitted together in disbelief, the familiar look of confusion hidden beneath a layer of worry that Jack had known since childhood. Knowing this was their moment, Jack continued, his voice tightening with urgency. I'm terrified of letting you down, but I can't live for someone else anymore. This is part of me. He paused, the silence heavy, hoping to glean some recognition or acceptance in his father's eyes. Instead, he felt the walls shaping the decades of their relationship tighten, suffocating and familiar. What are you trying to say? His father finally asked, guarded, unsure. Jack knew that open vulnerability was a dangerous gamble. I want you to see me for who I am, not just who you expect me to be. Just as he prepared to reveal the hidden canvas he'd just finished, a wave of uncertainty washed over him. He had stepped into new territory, but would he find acceptance or further fracture in this exchange? The weight of his father's expectations remained palpable as he caught the slightest flicker of turmoil in his father's expression. Jack held his breath, anticipating a response that could either shatter or fortify their connection. What awaited him as they stood at this precipice of uncertainty? The silence lingered, stretching beyond comfort until it felt like a taut string ready to snap. Jack searched his father's expression for some indication of understanding, but all he saw was a complex interplay of bewilderment and concern. The moment, once charged with promise, began to feel like an uncharted desert. Do you think art can pay the bills? His father's voice broke the stillness, heavy with doubt. I've worked my entire life to provide for this family. We have a legacy to uphold. Each word felt like a strike against Jack's resolve, but instead of retreating into the familiar malaise of guilt, he found a different kind of strength stirring within him. Dad, I know you've sacrificed everything for us. But I can't measure my worth by your standards anymore. I want to carve out my own definition of success. The crux of their stalemate hung in the air, thickening the tension around them. Jack understood the primal instinct that bound his father to tradition, yet, the disconnect illuminated the painful truth. Each man stood alone in their convictions, on either side of an existential chasm, yet, a small fire of defiance flickered inside Jack, a revelation that his path could diverge without dishonoring his father's sacrifices. Art is more than just a means to earn money. It's how I connect with the world. It's a part of me that I can't ignore. The words spilled out in a stream of half-formed thoughts, blending breaths of emotion with the raw edges of frustration. He glimpsed a change, perhaps an inkling of understanding in his father's eyes, but it hovered like a distant mirage. Art, his father echoed, the word seemingly foreign on his tongue. It's not just a hobby, son. It's risky. Risky is not following my heart, Jack countered, feeling the strength of his voice rising. If I don't take this step, I'll spend my life resenting myself. I don't want to live with that weight. I want you to be proud of the real me, not an idealized version that someone else created. His father took a precarious step back, struggling against years of ingrained beliefs. Jack knew that this was more than just an argument about art, it was a confrontation with legacy and identity that transcended societal norms. There are other ways to make a living. This is not practical, his father insisted, eyes narrowing, revealing the flickers of fear and helplessness that lay beneath the austere surface. Jack realized now he had to navigate through the minefield of feelings they both held: tradition and innovation, expectation and freedom. Is it practical to live half alive? Jack countered, his voice steady yet passionate. Art is not just a dream. It's my reality. I want to transform my internal world into something tangible. I want my work to speak the feelings I often can't. He could feel the power of his assertion as it penetrated the barriers that separated them. A profound silence enveloped them, during which Jack felt himself standing at the edge of a precipice, peering into the unknown. Before he could lose momentum, he stepped toward his father, clutching the letter he had written, nervous energy radiating through him. "Read this," he said, extending it like a lifeline. "It's everything I can't seem to articulate. I want you to understand." His father hesitated, then reluctantly accepted the letter, scrutinizing Jack with caution. Uncertainty loomed like a thunderous cloud, but the ink blotting the carefully chosen words could bring enlightenment or doom. Jack's heart raced. Would this act solidify their divergence or build a bridge towards understanding? "Can you really accept that I might be different than what you envisioned?" Jack breathed, praying for the courage to face whatever answer would unfold. As his father opened the letter with trembling hands, Jack felt the surge of possibility and dread intertwining. Would this moment lead to acceptance or further resentment? The resolution lay tremulously in the balance as Jack braced for the answer, lingering in uncertainty. Next came the hardest part, the acknowledgement of who he had become and how far he was willing to go to claim that identity. Would his father honor the courage it took to share his heart? Jack's heartbeat reverberated in his ears, a drumroll to an uncertain fate as he witnessed his father's hand tremble, the letter crinkling under his grip. Their shared silence grew heavier, a blanket of expectation that wrapped around them, binding their thoughts and fears together yet pulling them farther apart. In that moment, Jack caught glimpses of vulnerability in his father's face. The hard lines of a man who had forged his identity through unyielding labor were beginning to crack. His father's eyes darted across the page, scanning the words etched onto the paper, seemingly struggling to decipher the very essence of Jack's heart. Each phrase Jack had painstakingly crafted was a piece of himself laid bare, a glimpse into a world saturated with colors he wished to express but struggled to articulate. How could he fully comprehend a journey that wasn't his own? Jack wrestled with the notion that this letter might indeed bridge the gap between them or widen it even further. As the seconds stretched into what felt like hours, Jack could hardly suppress the anxiety gnawing inside him. Did his father even want to understand? Would reading his aspirations allow him to see beyond the stringent traditions that governed their family? Finally, the elder Johnson laid the letter down on the table, the unsaid words crackled in the air like static, waiting to arc into confrontation. Jack felt both terror and a flicker of hope igniting in his chest as his father finally met his gaze. "You want to risk everything on something so uncertain?" His father's voice trembled with a mix of incredulity and sorrow. "Do you really think that's what you're meant to do?" "It's not just about risk, Dad. It's about fulfillment. It's about living authentically," Jack replied, a fire behind his words to urge comprehension. "I don't expect you to understand it fully, but I need you to at least try." He noticed a deep breath punctuate the air between them, laden with resignation mixed with paternal worry. This wasn't merely a conversation about choices, it was a reckoning of dreams, desires, and disappointments layered over years of familial obligation. Jack had seen the sacrifices his father had made, working long hours under the relentless sun, the toll evident on his weathered hands. But now, he needed to step free from that legacy, not to disregard it, but to honor it by crafting his own. "Do you regret your choices?" Jack finally asked, leaning into the emotional chasm that lay open between them, daring to confront the source of his father's fears. The question hung, tentatively finding a home among the swirling emotions. Regret flickered across his father's face, but perhaps more potent was a profound sadness that shadowed his eyes. "Sometimes I don't know. It was my duty to provide, to secure stability for this family. But at what cost?" Jack could see the elder Johnson grappling with the demons of his own decisions, and within that struggle lay the key to his own liberation. I want to chase my dreams, Dad. Isn't that all you ever wanted for me? To find my own path. The air between them shifted, the stiffness slowly transforming into a more palpable tension that held a new possibility. Jack sensed he was right on the edge of a breakthrough, his father contemplating acceptance or resistance, yet even in that burgeoning understanding, Jack felt a flicker of doubt. Could sincerity woven through frail hopes create an impenetrable bond? Would freedom reclaimed from the shackles of expectation clash with the reality of his father's convictions? As the silence threatened to engulf them once more, Jack's gaze drifted to the window. Outside, the world continued to move, indifferent to their familial crisis. The colors of the sunset painted the sky, a vivid reminder of the transient beauty in transformation. His father broke the silence with a single, abrupt question, one that sent a chill down Jack's spine. What if you fail? That probing voice echoed within Jack, a haunting reverberation that forced him to confront his deepest fears. Failure had always loomed large, a specter that shrouded his ambitions. Yet, standing there, facing the man whose expectations he had long contended against, he felt an unfamiliar resolve crystallizing. I would rather fail trying than live in fear of never trying at all, Jack declared, the conviction swelling in his chest. If you can't support that, I have to forge ahead anyway. Suddenly, everything felt precarious. The intensity of the moment loomed, and Jack braced himself against the potential backlash of his father's response. Was he ready to face the consequences, whatever they might be? This was no longer just a mere dream, it was Jack's vibrant reality unfolding before them, tense and electrifying, an exploration of identity and courage, threaded into the fabric of a father-son relationship still struggling for authenticity. Dad, I need to know, are you with me, or will you stand against my journey? Jack's heart pounded as he awaited the next words that could either ignite their shared future or shatter it entirely. Would the answer forge a new path of understanding, or cement the divide between them irrevocably? Jack's breath hung suspended in the air between them, a taut string waiting to snap. He scrutinized his father's expression, searching for any hint of solidarity or disapproval, but found only a storm of conflicting emotions, his father's brow furrowed, eyes narrowing as he wrestled with his response. The seconds ticked away, stretching thin, and Jack could feel his own heartbeat hammering louder, shattering the silence. Suddenly, his father's shoulders relaxed, a flicker of understanding illuminating his eyes. I want to support you, Jack, his father finally voiced, the tremor lacing his words revealing a struggle yet unmet. I truly do. It's hard to let go of the way things have always been. My world is built on certainty. Your dreams feel like a gamble. In that moment, Jack discovered the hidden crux of their conversation. The chasm wasn't merely his own aspirations but involved his father's struggles with vulnerability and uncertainty. A sensation of empathy washed over him, a reminder that both were confronting fear, albeit from different perspectives. I know it's a leap, Dad, Jack replied softly, desperate to connect. But isn't life itself full of risks? Every choice we make takes us into uncharted territory, don't you think? The question is whether we embrace uncertainty or let it paralyze us. He could see the gears turning in his father's mind, evaluating the balance between ambition and stability. Jack felt a twinge of hope. Perhaps they could navigate this conversation together rather than in opposition. Perhaps I can't fully understand your dreams, the older man admitted, his voice steadier now but still layered with doubt. But I do understand sacrifice. I know what it means to work hard for something, even if that something looks different for each of us. You've sacrificed so much for me, Dad, Jack said, his throat tightening. But it's my turn to make sacrifices for my own journey. Can't we find a way to honor both our paths? The shadows of the room hung around them as Jack's words seemed to echo against the softly glowing light filtering through the window. It felt as if they were experiencing a tentative dance on the edge of a cliff. One misstep could send them tumbling into old ways of thinking where dreams were crushed under the weight of obligation. Jack's father let out a long, resigned sigh. What if you follow this path and it leads you nowhere? What if you lose everything? Jack met his father's penetrating gaze. Did his father not see it? The flicker of potential, the light that came from pursuing one's passion. What if I succeed, Dad? What if I discover something beautiful? Something that allows me to give back, not just to myself, but to you too. There it was again, the cryptic dance of hope and fear. The invisible thread that tied their shared legacy to the choices they were both confronting. Jack could hear the whispers of doubt bounce around his own mind, but this time, he fought to silence them with conviction. His father's clenched hands slowly relaxed, a subtle sign of yielding. You would need to prove it to me, Jack. Show me that it's not just a fleeting fancy but something you can cultivate, something you are willing to endure and fight for. Then let me show you, Dad. Let me prove it. Allow me the space to venture and discover without laying judgment on the outcome. Jack's voice trembled but remained steadfast. For a fleeting moment, a glimmer of understanding sparked between them, crafting an unspoken agreement to explore this layered journey side by side. But that flicker was chased away by an all-too-familiar miasma of apprehension. His father's face grew heavier, contorting with a mix of hope and fear. We need to discuss how you will do this, his father finally stated, almost to himself as if grappling with the truth he wished to avoid. You can't just walk away from everything. I want Jack replied, determination hardening in his chest. But I can't stay in a box that someone else has built for me. I need to risk whatever it is to become who I am meant to be. Then it starts now. Tonight, not with uncertainty or fear, but through action, his father slowly responded, his tone shifting from doubt to cautious acceptance. I want to see your first step into this unknown. But remember, this isn't just about you. It's about all of us and the choices we make together. The air thickened again, but this time with something different possibility. As Jack contemplated his father's words, the weight of expectation felt somehow lighter. Here stood the outline of a new path, promising growth, pain, and authenticity. As they exited the house together into the night, Jack didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time, he felt he would no longer be traversing the darkness alone. They were both stepping into uncharted territory, bound by an emerging understanding that fundamentally changed their relationship, yet, the ultimate promise of this bridge they were beginning to cross was still fragile. The journey was still fraught with the potential for misunderstandings and setbacks. Their shared moment of clarity could just as easily fracture into old patterns. A sudden pang of urgency pressed on Jack as he ambled into the cold night air. What would their first action together look like? Would he truly muster the courage to face the outward world, a world that could seem so unforgiving? The question twisted in Jack's mind, promising that the real challenge was just beginning, and with it came a lingering doubt. Were they ready to confront everything they had hidden from one another for so long? The frigid night wrapped around Jack like a frosty blanket, each breath a reminder of both exhilaration and uncertainty. As they walked side by side in silence, he could feel the expanding distance slowly dissolving into a fragile collaboration. But courage was fickle, and despite the understanding forged between them, doubt echoed louder in his chest. What's next, Jack? His father inquired, voice steady but laced with concern. Jack knew the implication. It was an invitation to define a path but also a test of his resolve. A sudden wave of trepidation gripped him. I think I want to make a plan, Jack stuttered. The vulnerability of admitting he didn't have everything figured out made him wince. Maybe I could start with something small, like exploring some workshops or attending creative forums where I can meet others who feel the same way. His father nodded, but Jack sensed the lingering skepticism. What if it wasn't enough? What if he failed to make the risky leap his father so dearly sought to witness? Jack clenched his fists, and in that moment, his heart raced with the burning desire for affirmation. I need to push past my comfort zone, Jack added, more resolute this time. I've spent too many years doing what's expected of me. That has to change. This declaration wasn't merely a promise to his father, but a vow to himself. The wind howled, intertwining with Jack's thoughts. What if he didn't take enough risks? Would he revert to a life constrained by familiar expectations, unable to tap into his potential? He could sense the weight of that question pressing heavily against his psyche, each tick of the clock reminding him that time was a relentless force. As if reading his thoughts, his father broke the silence yet again. You'll need support, more than I can provide. This field you're stepping into, it's different from what you know. His voice was laden with a protective instinct. It's critical you find mentors or networks that align with your aspirations. I want to see you surrounded by those who truly understand this journey. Jack felt an unexpected thrill ignite within him. The idea of seeking guidance from others who had traversed similar paths, modifying his vision through shared experiences, excited him. Flashes of creativity danced in his mind, workshops he could explore, places where vulnerability was a catalyst for growth. I could reach out to that online community I saw the other day, he said excitedly. They offer resources for aspiring artists and writers. Plus, I could connect with local creatives to see if there might be opportunities for collaboration. It's about being in the right space to grow. His father's gaze softened appreciatively, yet a new question flickered in his eyes. And are you truly ready for that kind of exposure? It's one thing to dream and another to navigate the reality that follows. Jack hesitated. Was he truly equipped to deal with the judgments that accompanied exposure? Could he handle people questioning his talent, his very essence? His mind raced to the fear of rejection, each critique a potential nail in the coffin of his dreams. But then he remembered that weight in his heart, the urgency to break free. I'll prepare myself, Dad. Jack's voice trembled but gained strength. I'll have to remember that critique doesn't define my worth. I want to embrace the journey, and if it includes setbacks or criticisms, then so be it. That's part of growing. They paused by the old oak tree at the edge of the property, its branches swaying gently in the cold wind. The tree had weathered countless storms, its roots intertwining deep into the earth, a metaphorical anchor for Jack's aspirations. Maybe I need to establish what success truly looks like for me, he mused, looking up at the silhouetted branches. If my growth means crafting something new from the ashes of my past, then I need to be ready to define it on my own terms. That's a start, his father replied, his expression shifting to one of cautious pride. Remember that every path is unique. But also, learn to embrace the pressure, it can forge resilience. Jack absorbed his father's words, recognizing the challenge contained within. It was one thing to step into the unknown, but could he cultivate the mental tenacity required to flourish there? He took a deep breath, letting the night air fill his being with clarity. As they resumed walking, the weight of their exchanged words fueled an emboldened spirit within him. He felt as if he was on the cusp of evolution, not just professionally, but personally. This was more than merely following a dream, it was a peeling back of layers, an exposure of Jack to the world in ways fears had long suppressed, yet, the familiar gnawing doubt remained a silent companion. Were his motivations strong enough to sustain this journey? What if they fell short, collapsing under the scrutiny of reality? It loomed ominously, urging him to confront not only the art world but also his deepest fears laid bare. A determined pulse quickened in Jack's veins. Ahead stretched a compelling horizon, one rippling with possibilities, sweetened by anticipation but sharpened by vulnerability, and as he grasped the edges of uncertainty with a renewed sense of courage, the tug of fate whispered in the wind, softly teasing the next choice that lay waiting in the shadowy depths of his burgeoning journey. Would he be bold enough to raise his voice amidst the cacophony of doubts clamoring for attention? As Jack stepped into the grimy yet vibrant art studio that had been home to countless dreamers before him, the aroma of paint mingled with the faint scent of turpentine, wrapping around him like a familiar embrace. This was the first workshop he decided to attend, spurred by the promise of exploring creativity with kindred spirits. Anxiety pinched at his gut, but with each well-contained step toward the heart of the room, the sense of apprehension ebbed slowly, yielding to a burgeoning sense of belonging. The walls were a patchwork of colors, splashes indicative of memorable struggles and triumphs. A palpable excitement pulsated within him as he realized he was no longer an outsider, he was part of a collective spirit, bound by an invisible thread of aspiration. Jack observed the other participants, expressive faces, focused grips on brushes, and determined scribbles waiting to find form on canvas. "Hi, I'm Jack," he announced, forcing a smile. As he introduced himself, he felt a nervous tremor in his voice. Yet he was met with warm nods and inviting responses, a shift from the solitude of self-doubt to an emerging camaraderie. They began their session with a simple exercise painting from an emotion rather than a visual stimulus. The facilitator's words echoed in Jack's ears as he dipped his brush in paint, "Let go of what you think your art should look like. Embrace whatever surfaces." Jack closed his eyes. Memories surged, moments of rejection, flashes of triumph, a flicker of laughter amidst tears. Inspired, he let the brush flow over the canvas, a visceral dance of color and chaos, sweat beading at his brow. As strokes blended and swirled, he felt emotions once tethered begin to liberate themselves, an unintended catharsis erupting within the confines of that studio. However, as the time to share their creations approached, doubt slid back beneath the surface. He watched his peers present their work, narratives spun from heartfelt strokes, shared vulnerabilities bubbling to the surface. When the time came for him to unveil his piece, he hesitated, the familiar pang of fear clawing at his chest. What if they didn't feel the emotions he had channeled? What if his art was judged as merely chaotic splatter, devoid of real meaning? "Remember," the facilitator gently urged, "art is a reflection of your truth. No one can critique that." With a deep breath, Jack stepped forward, trembling slightly. He stared at his canvas, drenched in color and emotion, an unfiltered glimpse of his once repressed self. This is chaos," he began, voice wavering. "But it's mine. It reflects my journey, my fear, my struggle, my hope." The room filled with silence, a magnetic pause before responsive energy surged back. Nods of understanding rippled across the crowd, and a woman in the back spoke up, "It's raw and real. I can feel your fight." Jack exhaled, warmth blooming in his chest as he absorbed the acceptance. The soothing balm of validation washed over him, reaffirming that he had taken the leap he so desperately needed. As the workshop stretched into deeper discussions, Jack found himself captivated by the stories that unfolded. Each artist shared not just their work but the raw components that sculpted their identities. He began to perceive the richness of collaboration, understanding that they were all pilgrims on divergent yet parallel paths seeking honesty through their art. When the session concluded, Jack lingered, a naive hope nestled in his heart to forge connections beyond this morning. He sought out the woman who had resonated with him, surprised to find that her accolades matched her approachable nature. Their conversation morphed into plans for future collaborations, invigorating him more than he could have imagined. However, as the sun slipped down the horizon, casting an amber glow upon the studio, a shadow whispered behind him, could this camaraderie withstand the judgment they would inevitably face outside these walls? Could the bonds forged in equality hold when faced with the harsh light of reality? With that thought lingering ominously in his mind, Jack knew he had only scratched the surface of his journey. It was time to confront the bigger challenge, navigating the judgment that loomed like a specter over every aspiring artist. And as he locked eyes with his new acquaintances, a question loomed larger than ever before: how far was he willing to push the boundaries of his vulnerability in a world rife with criticism? The following morning, Jack awoke with the raw ache of yesterday still lingering in his bones. As he prepared for the second day of the workshop, the fervor from the previous day sizzled beneath the surface of his anxiety, and unresolved tension that coursed through him like a live wire. He donned a paint-stained shirt, a badge of pride from his first conscientious act of creativity, but instead of fortifying him, it felt heavy. Could he sustain the momentum? Was he truly ready to peel back more layers of himself? As he stepped into the studio, the vibrant energy enveloped him differently today, more like a challenge than a comfort. The walls appeared more daunting, the artistic chaos transformed into a cacophony of expectations now weighed against the promise of acceptance. The workshop began with another exercise, but this time the instructions drummed away at Jack's resolve. He was asked to paint a self-portrait, not just in form but in essence. "How do you wish the world to see you?" The facilitator posed, his tone incisive and probing. It felt like an accusation more than a prompt, a challenge he had not anticipated. Jack positioned himself before the canvas, brushing tentative strokes that felt more like armor than expression. He cycled through the expectations and fears that had dogged him to this moment, the desire to show a polished, radiant image versus the gnawing impulse to reveal the mess beneath. Memories of his previous failures surged, exhibitions that fell flat, critics who dismissed him without a second thought. With each stroke, the specter of judgment hovered, and for a moment, he considered retreating, making a hasty excuse for why he couldn't complete the exercise. But then he remembered the warmth he had felt when he had shared his chaotic piece. Staying vulnerable in a world that sidestepped nuance required courage. Brushing away doubt, Jack transformed the chaotic outline of himself into a patchwork of colors, layering in darkness and light. He found beauty in the juxtaposition, the swirling blues of sorrow couched against the fiery reds of passion. This painting was not just a reflection of how he wanted to be seen but a testament to the turmoil that brewed within him, a persistent battle between aspiration and reality. As he stepped back, breathless, he became aware of eyes on him, curious, expectant. An unsettling sense of exposure crept in, as if he were naked in front of an audience, vulnerable to critique. This time the silence was pregnant with a gravitas that ensnared him. Could he endure the impending judgment, the inevitable comparisons? He stood there, waiting. Jack experienced a jolt when he saw the woman from the previous day, her gaze steady and unwavering. The acceptance he craved didn't come, instead it morphed into a mixed blend of anticipation and dread as he reflected on her impassioned reactions to others' works. What would she think of his self-portrait? Art is meant to evoke emotion, the facilitator's voice broke through Jack's internal turmoil. So, let us begin sharing. The others shared their pieces, each brimming with stories that reminded him of his fear. What he expressed through paint had the potential to unveil parts of him that felt repaired but remained cracked. When his turn came, apprehension bubbled over and tangled in his throat. Facing the crowd again, he hesitated but then realized he could not allow doubt to back him into a corner. "This is me. The colors and the chaos are a part of my journey," he managed, barely keeping his voice steady. He sensed the weight of expectation. How would they interpret the mosaic of colors? Could he articulate the pain and hope interlaced in every stroke? Those thoughts battled within him, juxtaposed against the deepening sensation that perhaps his vulnerability could serve as ammunition, a means to build resilience amidst the uncertainty. As he received their feedback, the warmth he felt yesterday began to flicker, pushed aside by a brewing storm of self-inflicted scrutiny. As he acknowledged their comments, he wondered if he might allow the community to witness him wholly, despite the presumable shortcomings. Yet just as acceptance and self-doubt fluctuated in his mind, a sudden, piercing realization struck him. Was he painting to please others or to fulfill his own creative essence? Feeling the pulse of choice under his skin, Jack grasped that navigating his truth amidst external judgment was a fight worth waging, a question of identity he had only begun to scratch the surface of. And as he contemplated this pivotal juncture, a new sense of determination ignited within him. But just as the embers ignited, another fear emerged. Could he truly withstand the scrutiny of the art world after laying his bare soul on canvas? The time had come to face a deeper battle within himself, and he could no longer turn back. Days turned into weeks, and Jack's commitment to his art transformed both his creative landscape and his relationship with his father. The mutual vulnerability they had carved out became the foundation of a new understanding. Jack dove deeper into this journey, each brushstroke on the canvas a reflection of his ongoing evolution, a bold testament to self-acceptance and creative ambition. The art exhibit approached, sending waves of anticipation crashing through him. It was no longer just about showcasing his mother's work or his burgeoning skill, it was now an extension of his identity, a confirmation that he could balance the legacy of hard work with the courageous pursuit of passion. As the date drew near, Jack found himself enveloped in newfound confidence. He could look into the mirror and see more than a rugged rancher, he saw an artist who embraced the complexity of his journey. The decisive moment finally arrived, and as he set up his pieces at the local gallery, the pulse of excitement coursed through him, vibrant and undeniable. Every painting seemed to hum a song of his experiences, the healing power of vulnerability painted in bold strokes of color. The gallery buzzed with life as attendees flowed through the doorway, their curiosity palpable. Jack stood beside his display, anxiously scanning the faces of friends, neighbors, and fellow ranchers. Some were skeptics, jawlines clenched with apprehension, others wore hopeful smiles, glimmers of pride in their eyes. He felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. This was at the culmination of weeks of expression, conflict, and growth. When the crowd gathered, Jack felt a deep sense of resolve ignite within him, obliterating the remnants of doubt that clung like stubborn shadows. He began to explain his art, the stories woven into every piece. These colors represent the struggle between my family's legacy and my desire to embrace my artistic soul, he shared, his voice steady, empowering. Suddenly, the fears that once churned restlessly in his gut took flight. With every word, he uncovered pieces of his heart, freely sharing the stories his mother once painted, and how they intertwined with his journey. Feedback streamed in unexpectedly, each nod, word of encouragement, and gaze laden with understanding validated his growth. The sense of isolation that had suffocated him began to dissipate, replaced by bonding threads of shared experience. As he continued to unveil the narratives behind his paintings, Jack caught sight of his father standing in the back of the room, his tough facade softened. This moment was marked by an extraordinary recognition. Jack wasn't just honoring his mother's legacy, he was authoring his own. Jack's father approached him, an unusual mixture of pride and apprehension flickering in his eyes. "Son," he said, voice filled with genuine emotion, "I didn't understand before, but I see it now. Your art, you've transformed what we've worked for into something new." It was an acknowledgement that transcended words, cutting through years of expectation. "What I once saw as a gamble, I understand now as a journey. Your passion carries weight, and your hard work can still resonate alongside our family's legacy. You've proven that you can honor both." With those words, Jack felt a surge of fulfillment wash over him, consolidating their connection anew. The tension that had once seemed insurmountable was now a faint echo, replaced with a bond strengthened by mutual respect and understanding. In the days that followed the exhibit, Jack transformed his ranch not just into a place where cattle roamed, but into a creative sanctuary. He established a small workshop at home where he would welcome other artists, sharing his journey and nurturing the creative spirit. He realized that his success was not just about personal achievement but about creating a space for others to embrace their own identities, unshackled by the weight of tradition. Jack had achieved something monumental, the freedom to live authentically while still honoring where he came from. It was a delicate balancing act, but he was no longer afraid to navigate it. He had proven to himself and his father that creativity and tradition could coexist beautifully. The man he had become was grounded in strength, clarity, and a renewed sense of purpose. Each canvas told a story that merged the legacy of ranching with the vibrancy of artistic expression, reflecting the complexity of his journey. Jack was not just a rancher or an artist, he was a bridge between worlds, embodying the belief that one could forge a new path without breaking ties with the past. This was not just personal growth, it was profound transformation and proud achievement delivered through an authentic embrace of one's true self. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.